All right, we are live. Hello, Andy Kemper.
Hello, Josh Kreitzer.
Here we are. We're trying something out a little bit different tonight. Hopefully, people are able to get in, and the link works a little bit better this time, and people can get in right off the hop. That is going to be. It's going to be a problem. I can hear myself. There we go. Sorry about that. I just said hello to you again. All right. So forgive me as I'm learning this technology, but holy cow. What a game. 7-6 final, 7-6 final when it was 4-1 going into the third. Is that what you saw happening in the final 20 minutes there?
Yeah, I didn't really. I thought the way Portland dominated the first 40 minutes that they just keep going into the third and give Spokane full marks. They came out in the third and got that early goal, and then kind of seized momentum for about 3 or 4 minutes, and the Winterhawks kind of regained their composure after the fourth goal, and I played pretty well again after that, and then eventually got the go-ahead goal on a power play from Cade Nolan, but it was almost reminiscent of the first meeting between the two teams up in the Showware, the first home game for the Winterhawks. Yeah. When the Hawks were up 4-1 in that game also, and Spokane scored twice in the third to make it 4-3. They were never able to tie it that night, and Portland wound up winning the game 4-3. But it was kind of a similar kind of feel to the hockey game because the Winterhawks were the dominant team in the first 40 minutes without question, and just a few minute gap where the Chiefs kind of took control and made it interesting. And then again, they made it interesting at the very end. But I think if you look at this game, you look at 53 minutes, and Portland was by far the better team on the ice tonight. And I thought even last night's game that Portland was a better team for large stretches of that hockey game also. They just weren't able to beat Mason Beaupit after the first one snuck past him on what, if it was a baseball game, would have been called an error. But I thought Portland played well in both games this weekend, but they get the 2 points and nothing, come home and get some home cooking back on the Coliseum ice.
Yeah, I just got out of the press conferences with Mike Johnson and Adam Meglio and Eli Zumak and Jane Dureau. So we'll kind of touch on kind of some of their thoughts here in the next few minutes, but just want to welcome those who are joining. We kind of went into a full scramble mode there at a second. Eventually I'll get better at this as we kick things off. I don't quite have the radio stuff and on-camera experience that you do, but just want to give a quick thank you to Jay Rallison Sellers for helping bring this for us. He's really just he's one of our big sponsors at PNW Hockey Talk. So just thank you to him. And you can check him out at jrallisonsellers.com. But, Andy, so we're also going to be taking people's questions. So fire them off into the YouTube comments there, and we'll be happy to address those. I know the first questions we're going to get are the 3 stars of the game, and I have 18 windows open. But the first star is Seth Jarvis. Second star, Jane Dureau. Third star, Eli Zumak, for those who care about such things. So after the game last night, Johnson talked a lot about the shot quantity was where he was looking for, but the shot quality was not quite there. Mm-hmm. Tonight was a completely different story. He also said that we need to score, which is a very fancy hockey term, right? They got 7 goals tonight.
It's a great objective for sure.
Yeah. How do you feel that the team did going from Friday to Saturday?
I think they did get 36 shots on Mason Beaupit, but a lot of those were from the perimeter, and they didn't have the traffic and the drive to the net. Maybe they had tonight a little bit, but tonight I think the finish was better for sure. And I think on the power play, the Hawks were 0-for-5 on the power play on Friday night and didn't get a lot of good looks. They passed it around. They had puck possession for large stretches in the offensive zone, but didn't really generate a ton of chances. I think tonight they were more direct. They got the puck to the net more consistently. The 2 goals they scored on the power plays were from long-range shots. Seth Jarvis with a shot from the left circle that he beat Campbell Arnold clean, and then the Cade Nolan goal to make it 5-4 with a shot through traffic that wound up bouncing in off a Spokane defenseman. So I think the shoot first, ask question later philosophy I think was better tonight on the power play. It's the John Wayne power play is what I like to call that. Shoot first, ask questions later. And I think that to me was maybe the difference tonight on the special team numbers. They did give up the shorthanded goal. The power play they had early in the third was not very pretty. They gave up 2 breakaways, and one of them wound up in the back of their net. But for the most part, the power play was more effective tonight. They got pucks to the net. They had better traffic in the lanes. And I think that resulted in a 2-for-5 night of the man advantage. And that's ultimately probably what won the hockey game for Portland.
Yeah. And I thought kind of coming into the game when Portland has kind of struggled maybe in the third period or during certain stretches where they've given up, where we've seen now they've given up goals kind of back to back and quickly, kind of what they do to other teams in years past, right? When they get 1, they're going to get 2. When they get 2, they're going to get 3, right? And that, I believe that took place in, I was out of the lineup on Tuesday, but that seemed to be a problem in Everett. Right, I believe, or was it, I'm mixing my games up?
Yeah,
but
nope, it was third period. They got some quick goals in the third to get back and tie the game and eventually win the game. So,
and so tonight you saw it again, right? That's not how they wanted to come out to start the third. You knew Spokane was going to come out hard. They obviously weren't pleased with their performance in the first 40 minutes, but I don't think you'd draw it up those 3 goals in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. But how they responded was also another kind of key moment for what Johnston was looking for from Friday into Saturday, which was second power play. You kind of touched on it. And then also his defense getting shots through. Yeah. And Cade Nolan comes in for Jonas Brunberg, who is out with an upper body injury after playing only 2 shifts on Friday night, and scores what looked to be the game-winning goal before what 3 more goals were scored.
Yeah, they got 2 after that, but they're in the last 36 seconds. So.
Right. But so kind of in all intents and purposes, it looked right. And then with Knack, I think officially gets the game winner right on the empty netter. So, but you got the response if you're Johnson that you were looking for. Yeah, I feel like.
Yeah, they had more time obviously tonight than they had on against Everett during the midweek game, because Everett got the 5-4 go-ahead goal with just over 3 minutes left in that contest. So tonight, I mean, it happened early in the third. It also, happened last night early in the second. They gave up the 2 goals within the first 2 minutes to go from 1 up to 2-1 down, and weren't able to get the tying goal before the empty netter was late. So it's been kind of that way for Portland, where they go through stretches where they, have a 2 to 3 minute gap where the other team will still score a couple goals in fairly quick succession. And as you mentioned, the Winterhawks were notorious for that during their years when they went to the finals, and actually even the last few years under Mike Johnston. It's you smell the blood in the water and you go for that extra step. And I really think that maybe one of the turning points was getting the power play, and about halfway through that third period they capitalized on, even though I thought they'd settled down after that. Once the fourth goal was goal, I thought they settled down and had some pretty good shifts, but the power play was good for that opportunity, and Nolan found its way home on the second unit, which was key also. Because you're right, the Hawks were young on defense tonight without Brunberg in the lineup. I thought Luca Cannoni really is starting to show what he can do in the Western Hockey League. He's a very mobile defenseman. He got an assist on the Nolan goal, his first Western Hockey League point tonight. And it was just, a good effort from him. He had a tremendous outlet pass in the first period that sprung Kyle Jazowski on a breakaway. Yep. And you're starting to see that those young defensemen get involved. Ryan McCleary picked up another assist tonight on the goal by Jazowski in the second period. So, we talk about development. This is all about development in these 24-game seasons. Right. And these young defensemen are getting their chance to really develop, because, there's some guys that would usually play bigger minutes that aren't in the lineup right now. And I thought all of them played well tonight. And, it results in a 7-6 win. It doesn't sound like a great defensive effort, but I think they showed themselves fairly well tonight in a building where Spokane can definitely put up the scoring.
The other play for Cagnoni, I think, was he drew the penalty that led to that really long extended delayed call, where I think Portland had the puck for 45, 60 seconds that's the second time now we've seen them do that, where they've maintained possession of the puck for an extended period of time, almost kind of giving themselves a little bit of an extended power play. But he draws that penalty as well, and he drew that penalty behind Spokane's net, which shows that he had the confidence to jump up into the play. And Johnson has talked about it all throughout my time covering, and I imagine through all your times in Portland, is he wants his young defensemen to not play scared. And he wants them to take risks and to make plays. And he said that, it's the easy way to play the game is to sit back, but he wants to attack. And when you have a very young 16-year-old, not even just a 16-year-old, similar to like Tyson Kozak, who just turned 16 or with a December birthday, Kenyoni turned 16 in December. So about as young as you can get as a 16. And so, I just have been impressed by him. And, he had the shot that Arnold was able to glove tonight, but, he wound up and took that shot pretty quick. So, you're starting to see that, right? You mentioned McCleary. The other guy, rookie that I wanted to see, who kind of came out of nowhere is Luke Shelter. And, he wasn't signed this time a month and a half ago. And he wasn't on Portland's, he was clearly on the radar, but he wasn't on the roster. He wasn't kind of in the plans. And so, some of that you wonder is with the injuries up front with Litke and Clausen and Kozak and Gervais to start the year, like so maybe there's some of that opportunity, but he's also, he was playing in Minnesota, I believe, and had, he's played like 60 some games. He's one of the few players who's actually in game shape. And he brings a little bit of a different style to Portland, and I think he's 6'2", 180 something pounds as a 16. So, and he hadn't even practiced with the team. Like when I talked to Mike about it last night, he's like, yeah, he hasn't even had a chance to practice because he's been quarantined and doing his passing the protocols. So what did you see from him through his first 2 games with Portland, and what do you kind of see him kind of turning into? Is he's kind of got a little bit of a background coming from the Colorado Thunderbirds, same kind of place as Jake Grecius, kind of sliding into a center. Is he do you kind of see some similarities in a young Jake Grecius maybe?
I was thinking that, and also Alex Overhart, who also came from the same program. Bigger winger. I don't know if he'll be a centerman or not. A big bruising winger on the wing is not a bad thing. And I really thought that he looked confident. He didn't shy away from contact. He carried the puck through center into the zone and held possession and looked for plays. A few times the puck got away from him, but for the most part, for a 2-game tryout, for lack of a better word, even though it's not really a tryout, he's already made the team, at least temporarily as an affiliate player. I thought that he showed well. He had 2 shots on goal in the first game on Friday. Looking at the stats tonight, he had another 2 shots on goal, and he was a -1 because there was a goal scored against him in the last 30 seconds of the contest. But for the most part, I think he showed that he's got the skating ability to play. That's the big thing with the Mike Johnston coach team is, can you skate and can you make plays at speed? And I thought he picked up some outlet passes with speed through center and got it into the zone. And, it's going to be an interesting player to watch. You mentioned Grecius and I think Overhart as well. They were kind of similar frames, similar style. We turned out to have, really productive careers as a Winterhawk. And with him being only 16, there's a lot of room for him to grow and a lot of room for him to be a major part of this team for the next 2 to 3 years.
We got a question in the YouTube chat. I'll read that one here. So if you've got questions or comments, please fire them away in there. We'll do our best to get to those. Forgive Andy and I as we kind of get long-winded with some of our of our answers and stuff.
Me especially.
No, that's what it is. Hockey guys, right? You just love to talk. So the question is, did the team stay over in Spokane Friday night? Early on, the plan was to come home after every game. So the answer to that question is yes. So at the start of the season, it was that there was going to be no hotel stays. And shortly, I believe the timeline was in beginning of March, there was kind of some easing up on restrictions. And then as the season got closer, they were able to work with the league to get 2 stays in hotels. one being this weekend. So they did spend the night on Friday in a hotel in Spokane. And then the other was when they were in back-to-back games in Seattle.
That was last weekend.
Last weekend. Was that only just last weekend? 2 weekends ago?
So.
2 weekends
no,
ago?
But it was 2 weekends ago. They played Everett last weekend.
Yeah. So they stayed up in Kent when they were back-to-back, not when they had the home game, right? Remember, to start the year, right? They had back-to-back. During that time, they came home because from there's a couple of different theories that was out there that I kind of want to get corrected. Is one, it was the thought that it was due to one being considered a home game and one being considered a road game, and so therefore Portland was not able to technically spend the night in a hotel. Right. That wasn't necessarily the case. It was actually a coach's decision from Mike Johnson to make the bus trip. And from my understanding of that was early on, he wanted to get, knowing how many games that they had on the road to start the year, he wanted to kind of get the guys used to the bus travel, especially the rookies. I know you've covered the team a long time. When they've done the longer road trips, like when they go out east, Johnson likes to have those at the beginning of the year because that's when the team can kind of come together and when you're kind of traveling and that type of stuff. So the answer to the question in my long-winded answer is yes, they did spend the night in Spokane. All of their other games throughout the year will be trips back and forth and day of games.
And this is the last time they go back to Spokane. These are the only 2 games that they're going to play in Spokane the rest this season. So
yeah, exactly. But so like when they go to Tri-City, I think they've got another trip out to Tri-City. It's
one more, yeah.
It's there and back. And all the trips up to Everett and Seattle are up and back. And
we're already nine games down on the road trip now, on the road schedule.
So there's 3 left?
Let's see. Tonight was the eighth road game, so I think there's 4 left.
Yeah. Okay. So, and the other thing, Jaden Duro mentioned it tonight in his post-game press conference, was how challenging it is, and it's the first time that he remembers going up to Spokane and playing the day of the game.
Yes.
And Johnson even said bus legs that they had on Friday, and that there were stretches where they kind of had their legs, but that was something new that even the veterans maybe didn't have experience on. And there are other teams in the WHL who do that. I feel like, who are maybe more used to that, but Portland has always, from my understanding, when they make those longer trips, whether it be to Victoria, Prince George, Tri-City, Spokane, they try and go out the day before, spend the night in the hotel, or vice versa, coming back. If they have a game in Spokane and then a home game in Portland, they'll spend the night in Spokane and treat the home game like a road game and come back. And so that way they spend the night in the hotel, get a good night's sleep, not getting back at weird hours. Is that kind of your understanding?
Oh, absolutely. The whole time that I was broadcasting for the team, whenever we went to Spokane, it was always you leave. It was a Friday night game. You left on Thursday. Because usually the players would have school on Thursday morning. They'd have a practice and then get lunch. And then we'd leave mid to late afternoon, usually around 2 o'clock or so, 2 to 3 o'clock. And then you get into Spokane about 7, drop the gear off, 7:30, then go have a meal. And there's usually at least one stop in there to go to Starbucks. Usually in Kennewick on the way to Spokane. But it was always you went up the day before, and then they'd have a game day in Spokane where they get up in the morning, have a quick morning skate, meetings, meal, rest time, and then go to the rink. So it is a bit of a different schedule, even for those guys who've been with the team. And I'll corroborate Jaden Duro's story because my niece is in Spokane and shared an elevator with him, and he said the exact same thing to her today. So in the elevator, that he said his legs felt a little sluggish yesterday after being on the bus for the day trip up. So I think that it is a bit of a different animal this year. And I thought the Hawks had more jump tonight than they did last night, and it showed early when they were up 4-1 after 2. So. It's hard to put a equation or percentage on how much a difference it is, but I think it showed in the 2 games this weekend.
We're coming to you live following the Saturday game between the Portland Winterhawks and Spokane Chiefs. Final score 7-6. 8 goals scored in the third period, 2 in the last 30 some seconds of the contest.
Yeah.
So, Andy, big thanks again to Jay Rallis and Sellers for making this possible. For anyone who's watching, feel free to throw a comment or a question into the chat, and we'll do our best to try and get to those if you have them. And then, so I want to take us a little bit in a different direction on kind of looking at what you saw from Spokane. And when I saw them live at the home game in Seattle, they looked like if Beckman and Zumak didn't score, they weren't going to score.
Right.
And they've started to kind of round out their roster a little bit. They've Aglio, their head coach, had kind of moved those two guys around a little bit tonight. He split them up for portions of the night, put them back together when he needed goals, when he needed momentum. Larson had 3 points last night for them. Spokane is another one of those teams that is missing a significant number of players to the USHL. So what did you see from Spokane that impressed you?
I like the play of Atchison and Jacobson. That line seemed to get them going in the third period. They both scored in the first 3 minutes, and maybe that's why I noticed them more. But I thought that, they had jump, and they actually, had split up Beckman and Zumak. Zumak was struggling to score goals. He had, I think, 7 assists, but only had 1 goal heading into tonight's contest, and he wound up getting shorthanded goal tonight to make it his second of the year. But I really liked what Atchison and Jacobson did. I think Svetlikov is a player that's has an opportunity to put up some decent numbers in the league. He's getting an opportunity to play with some of the bigger names for Spokane right now to start the year, in the absence of maybe a Toporowski, who would normally be in the top 6. So there's some young guys there on their blue line. They're also pretty young. Leduc is an overage, and Russell's an overage, but beyond that, they have some youth there. I really would like to see Sword, Graham Sword, more. He's hurt right now. And also Matt Gross is another young defenseman who I think has some promise, but he was out of lineup tonight as well. But they got a goal tonight, the final goal in the last second from Freed Moore. And Chudley also has played big minutes for him over the stretch. So I think there's some good young talent there. Obviously it's a bit of an interesting scenario with Lucas Parikh not in net, and what would be different for them? Would they have a better record right now? But I can't argue with what Campbell Arnold and Mason Bopit did. I mean, Arnold's numbers tonight were great, but he faced, I think it was 48 shots in tonight's game, and, gave up 6 goals. But he made some big saves also in this game, also, especially denying Jarvis his hat trick twice in the last 10 minutes of the third period on big saves. So there's, Spokane's one of those teams that always seems to be in the hunt. They never seem to, at least in the last 10 years or so, get over the hump and make a name for themselves late in the season. They were making that run last year. I think they'd won 10 in a row before the pandemic hit, and Portland was heading to Spokane for maybe a fateful game in what the regular season would be in that when the season shut down. So, but I there's some young talent there. I'm just, up front offensively, I didn't see a lot of skill behind the guys I mentioned. But to be interested to see what happens there. Yeah,
they've kind of been a 3-line team to start. And, they've got that 4th line. They brought in Mitch Koner, who's, a Minnesota kid who's on a 1-year loan from Prince George. Maglio tonight said that, he hasn't played a game in 13 months. So he'll start to maybe kind of get adjusted and maybe can start to make an impact for them. And there's just, the depth isn't there. And so when the benches have to get shortened, Portland goes from 4 to 3, Spokane goes from 3 to 2, right? Or 3.5 to 2.5. And the longer that Portland can force a team like Spokane to play at their pace, I believe Zumac touched on it in his TV broadcast, is that they were playing, or his interview in the second intermission, that they were being forced to kind of play at Portland's pace. And that can start to wear on the guys. And how Spokane does that over a shortened season, I don't know. I think when you look at the U.S. division and this developmental league and developmental season, I feel like Seattle's got the best young talent across the board in the division that we've seen, especially their 16-year-olds, and then Connor Roulette and Thomas Milic, who are I believe have played their last game now. I believe with Seattle, they're off to the U18s. Same thing with Owen Zellweger. So the two, I'm kind of spinning in circles here, but the two teams who didn't lose players to the USHL, not counting Tri-City didn't lose anyone, and they're not going to have anyone going to the U18s. But Everett and Seattle, who didn't lose players to the USHL, is now losing players to the U18s, with Owen Zellweger going from Everett, which will be a big loss for them.
Yeah, they're all. I mean, it's a big loss for Seattle, especially because Roulette's obviously a highly ranked player for the draft and one of their top offensive players, and then you have the Thomas Milic, who's played very well in net in his first year. So interesting to note tonight, Tri-Cities beat Everett 6-2.
Wow!
So that game just went final.
Okay. Holt was in that, I believe, for that one. Right?
It was Blake Holt was in that.
Braden Holt. Blake Holt.
Braden Holt. Yep.
Braden
Sorry.
Holt. Yep.
Blake Holt was a goalie about 25, 30 years ago, I think, in the Western Hockey League.
Yeah.
But Everett outshot Tri-Cities 35-20. So I believe it was Boyko that was in that for the Americans who stopped 33-35.
Yeah.
So big win for the Americans, and they're playing better hockey too. So
they are.
But I agree. I mean, it's going to be, everybody's kind of got players that aren't here. When you look at Tri-Cities, they had a pretty highly ranked Euro. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but he would have made a major impact on him. Defenseman, same for Spokane.
Yeah.
So
I think the guy for Tri-City is there. I can't remember.
Golian's there, yes. I thought there was another.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I can't remember his name either. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was for Spokane, there was a 16-year-old defenseman who played in the World Juniors.
Okay.
Who wasn't able to join them. But when you look at Portland, you also look at USHL, the four guys, would have been major contributors or major players.
Huge.
And they still have an opportunity to come and play some games at the end of the year for Portland. I was looking at the USA schedule. I think it's the 25th of April is their last game.
Yep.
And so they could eventually come back to Portland and get in the lineup for the last few games of the year. So,
yeah. It wouldn't surprise me because they're still technically going to be affiliate players. So they, there was a lot of people who were saying like, well, they could come back and when their season ends, that they can play as many number of games as possible.
That's up to 5 per player.
Yeah. It's 5 or 6, I think, this year or something like that. But the difference is because they're like, some people were reaching out to me saying, well, what about like, was it like Cousins or somebody who had a big playoff run as a 15 or something like that, or as an affiliate player as a 16 who came in. But the difference there is Hockey Canada versus USA Hockey. And so these guys have a year loan and release to the USHL. So regardless, so it wouldn't surprise me if you want to call it reinforcements for Portland coming back for maybe the last 5 or 6 games. I believe when I looked at the schedule, Portland has 2 games back to back against Everett, and then I think after that, those Lincoln guys could be back. But
I do want to clarify in the Tri-Cities Everett game tonight. Braden Holt started, gave up 3 goals on 8 shots in 27 minutes, and was replaced by Dustin Wolf, who played 32 minutes and gave up 2 goals on 13 shots.
Okay.
So Holt takes the loss, but Wolf was in net for the last 2 goals against the empty netter that Tri-City scored. So
yeah, so there's plenty of young talent in this division. Yeah. And there's kind of going back to that point is there's a lot to like. I really like Mark Lajoie from Tri-City, like anytime I can watch him play, it's like, it'll be
He's got a bit of
interesting.
He's got a bit of Yusuf Elamaki in him.
He does. He does.
Good skater, good with the puck. Never seems to get caught out of position.
Yeah, can make a pass too. Like,
right.
He's got the vision. It's kind of all there for him. So I still just that first game. I think it was the first home game. I was right. We were right on that line for him when he sent that cross ice pass through. Yeah. And I was like, yep, when he gets drafted, that one's going to be on NBCSN or whoever is, I guess, going to be showing that now that NBCSN's going away. But so, all right, let's kind of bring it back in a little bit. I've kind of taken us off on a tangent. So one of the players Portland, easy to do. One of the players Portland did get back recently is Tyson Kozak, and who's only played in a couple of games. And I asked Johnson about that this evening, and he's like, it just makes a complete difference when you have him back in the lineup. For faceoffs, I think you got the box score up. I think he was one of Portland's top faceoff guys according to the stats in the building. But he just allows players to, when he was out with Clausen out as well, Jarvis slid into the middle. Newkirk had to slide into the middle, kind of play out of position a little bit for them. And Johnson has mixed different guys up on that line with Jarvis and Dro. You touched on this in one of the other post-game shows that we've done, that Johnson likes his pairs, and he'll kind of move guys around different players with the different pairs. And, we've seen Marcus Newman up there. We've seen Gabe Clausen. We've seen Mason Manick. Tonight we saw Tyson Kozak. We've seen Reese Newkirk. I think they're just kind of trying to spark those guys. So what did you see from Kozak, who's now only basically played 3 or 4 games?
Yeah, so he's played actually a total of 72 Western Hockey League games now after last night.
Sorry, not this season, but yeah.
I know, but just in general, he's now played what would be considered a full season. Yep. But Kozak is a guy that's kind of a jack of all trades, good defensively, has good offensive instincts. He's a fast skater. Face-off circle is one of his big. You mentioned that he was 10 for 18 tonight in the face-off circle, and actually in his career he's at 51.32% of his face-off wins before tonight, and it'll go up because he was 10 for 18. So, he and you mentioned it earlier. Also, he is a young player. He turned 17 in December. Yep. So he was one of the youngest guys in the Western Hockey last year, and he put up respectable numbers in his first year as a 17-year-old, one of the youngest 17s, I should say, last year. So I think that he's going to get an opportunity to be more of an offensive player than what we saw last year. His numbers don't show it so far this year. He doesn't have any points yet this season, but his value is a 200-foot hockey player that can do whatever you need him to do, kind of the Swiss Army knife, for lack of a better term. And when you get Gabe Clausen back also, hopefully in the near future, that's really going to solidify the center position. And I think Kyle Jazowski as a center has also really shown that his growth in the 11 games that the Hawks have played so far this season, getting his second goal of the season. His actually face-up numbers as a 16-year-old are actually pretty decent. They're about 46% for him, and he's not the biggest guy in the world. But back to Kozak, I mean, this is a big year for him. I mean, he's draft eligible as a late birth date, and he was, I think, a C-ranked Central Scouting prospect. So it's an opportunity for him. It's unfortunately missed the games early in the season due to the injury, but he now has 13 games left this season to really show what he can do. Yep.
You mentioned Jazowski. I believe he's the guy who played at the Little League World Series. And I'm pretty sure, if I recall, I'm pretty sure I learned that at the Neely Cup 2 years ago, that he was at the Little League World Series.
Yeah, I remember that.
Or something, or whatever Canada's equivalent is of the Little League World Series, or something like that. He has a baseball background. So tonight when he gets his goal and he bats it out of midair, first thing I'm thinking is he's swinging for the fences. And sometimes the baseball terms is like you mentioned earlier with an air, he was swinging for the fences there. So I had, I'm watching the game by myself in, the room, and I was like, swing, right? Like, it's just, so I don't know. I like to crack myself up sometimes. So We did get another question in the YouTube chat, so
Yep.
thank you for that. Do you guys think we see playoffs this season?
No,
I don't either.
I don't. They would have to have had already made some kind of announcement by now. And with what's happened with the Kelowna Rockets, and they're shut down, and now Calgary and Medicine Hat are also shut down for various periods of time. I just don't see how they could make the timing work to get it to end before July.
Right.
So, I think it'd be great, but at this point, I think if you get through the 24 games, get some guys some experience, and start preparing for training camps in the end of August. So I don't have anything official to go off. That's just my gut feeling.
Yeah, same here. And the OHL hasn't started up. The Quebec League has been a mess with their starts and stops. So it's hard to know from their standpoint too on what would that even look like, and what do the playoffs mean if they're not going from M Cup or anything like that. Right. So I would be surprised as well. And do you want to risk it more? The other aspect too is that the owners have signed off on the season knowing with the expectation to start the 2021-2022 season on time.
Right. And also you gotta look at the money aspect. No fans. Do you want to have no more fans for potentially 16 more home games?
Right.
I mean, that's the other business aspect of it that you have to take into account of.
Yep. And especially with the stream being what it is this year, I can't imagine that they're getting a lot of positive, word of mouth sales with that right now. But that's not a big revenue driver. There's not a TV deal, right? I think if there was a national TV deal in Canada for the Western League, that maybe there's, that TV money talks like we see in the NHL. But yeah, I don't want to. I am a betting man. I do love to play my Oregon lottery here and there, but I'm not quite at the confidence level where I'd say I'd bet 2 months mortgage that there wouldn't be playoffs, but I'm pretty close.
I wouldn't bet against it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So, and I like to gamble a bit too. So
One of my life mottos is life is better with money on the line. So
there you go.
There you go. So there you have it. So go ahead. I think you had something?
No, I was just going to mention that I've been getting texts from our good friend, Mr. Nick Merrick, talking about scoring plays tonight. And I think the empty net goal is going to go to Newkirk.
Oh, because it hit his skate.
They hit his skate on the way through. Yeah. So that one would probably read Newkirk from Knack and from Delorme. I think that might be the only change for tonight.
I got a similar text from our guy Nick Merrick. Can you do me did Robbie tip Cade's goal?
No, he didn't. It hit Chudley.
Yeah.
So that's what Nick and I do usually after the games. We go and look at video and confirm the scoring plays. And tonight, I thought actually they did a pretty good job. The Newkirk one is probably, one that Nukes is like, it's kind of a cheesy one, but
right.
It all counts.
Yeah. And especially that's got to be an interesting conversation because you have Newkirk who's trying to get signed.
Yep.
Right. And you have Knack who's trying to get drafted. Right. Yep. So you've got guys, some of those conversations take place and, not getting too into the weeds, but sometimes you'll have a guy who'll say, yeah, just take it, or whatnot. But kind of your role after the, during the games and then after the games too, is to make sure that the scoring is right. So I appreciate that you do that. So sometimes fans will see, oh, well, this guy had a 3-point night when in fact he had a 4-point night, or he actually had a 1-point night because they had, 2 instead of 26 or whatever it is. So
a little background to throw for the fans out there also. Once the game sheet goes final on the Western Hockey League website, the only people who can edit it are in the league office. So you can't go back and reopen it and edit it. So that's why it may take a day or two for a scoring change to be amended.
Especially if the scoring change happens over the weekend.
Yeah. So actually, there was a change last night, and they actually did it today.
Oh, they did. Okay, good.
So
good.
So that's kind of how it works. We try to, especially when we're home games, if we see something and we know that it's not correct, we try to correct it before the game sheet goes final.
Yep.
That saves either Nick or I having to email the Western Hockey League office to get it amended. But that's the system and how it works. I really wish that they would just give us access, but you don't want people actually probably having full access as they can go and, do what they want to do. But in any case, that's kind of how that works. One thing I did want to mention too, we haven't talked about it much, but the goaltending for Portland and, how it's kind of a cruel sport sometime. When you compare like Brock Gould's numbers versus Dante Giannucci's numbers, Dante's numbers are, as I think you said in a tweet today, he's proven he's the number one goaltender in the Western Hockey League based on his statistics, but his record is not probably. I know it's not where he wants it to be at 2-4-2.
Yep.
Now Brock Gould is now 3-0.
Yep.
And his numbers aren't what Dante's are, but doesn't mean he hasn't been a quality goaltender. He's just got more run support because we're on a baseball reference term tonight.
Yes, we are.
And that's helped him get to 3-0 record, but it's one of those things. So I was thinking, what was the last Winterhawk goaltender to win his first 3 starts? The last one was Cole Kaler in 2016-17. He won his first 4. Prior to that, you go to Aiden Hill, who won his first 4 back in 2013-14. Also in 13-14, Corbin Bowes. Now, he didn't win his first start. He lost in a shootout, but he won his next 12.
Okay.
So he was 12-0-1 before he lost in regulation.
Sure. Okay.
And he went 13-1-0-1 that season.
So that's what they don't call that a winning streak. They call it a point streak.
Point streak.
Point streak.
Yeah. And then back in 12-13, Cam Lanigan started the year for Portland, played 3 games, went 3-0 with 1.00 goals against average and 96.3 save percentage, and we traded him. So he only played 3 games for the Hawks. He went 3-0 with a 1.00.
Yeah. Thanks for your services. Good luck.
Yeah. Have a nice trip to the East. But so that's I just wanted to see who was the last goaltender to go 3-8 to win their first 3 starts in a Winterhawk sweater, and that's just some recent history as far back as I went.
Okay.
You look at other guys. You look at Matt Caruth, who wound up with the most wins in franchise history. He had to get to his 8th start before he got his 3rd win. He was 2-5 prior to that. So
sure. You always got the stats, Andy. Love it.
The numbers for you.
Yep, we got to have it. So we're approaching 9 o'clock. Portland time. So we've got one more question in the chat that I want to get to, and then I'll kind of toss it over to you for final words. So again, appreciate those comments in the chat, and be sure to fire those off to us when we do our next one of these. And so the question is, Andy, you're a stickler for the rules. Why did we see a buzzer beater on Spokane's 6th goal?
Why did we see a buzzer beater?
Yep.
Or why wasn't it reviewed to see if it actually beat the buzzer? Either case, stickler for the rules. Really, I mean, at that point when the shot goes in the net, it is since in this year's Western Hockey League with no video review, it is the judgment of the referee if the puck crossed the goal line before the buzzer went. So in the minds of the referees tonight, they ruled that it entered the net. It's really hard to see on the broadcast just exactly where the clock was when it went in. But I think even though it didn't matter to the outcome of the game, it does matter for statistics for the guy who scored the goal and the guy who gave up the goal and the guys that are on the ice. I still think they probably would have looked at it to see if it actually did go in before the clock went to zeros.
Yep.
But I think it's just Friedborg now has his first ever career Western Hockey League goal, and it's one he'll remember. But
he'll call it a buzzer beater.
I mean, if it went in, it went in, and it did go in. And so without having the ability to take a look at the replay to see if it actually beat the clock or not. We called a good goal and we move on now. Hawks still get 2 points and head home happy.
And I think the other factor when I look at that was, did any of the Portland players let up on the play, thinking that it was over, right?
No.
And they didn't, right? It looked like Gould was still making, an attempt at it. It looked like the Portland defense was trying to, block some guys out, kind of clear the front a little bit. So I don't feel like there was, a case of, it being a second or two afterwards that, and Portland had stopped playing or something like that. So, but anyway, that's where we land on that one. So Andy, final thoughts before we wrap up here this evening?
My final thought is I'll be very happy to get back to the Coliseum and see some games back in Portland. I knew early in the season that the schedule was very road heavy. And with only 2 official games played at the Coliseum so far this season, and the other home game being played in Kent, be nice to get back to the Coliseum for some home cooking. I think there's 3 games coming this week: Wednesday against Spokane, and then back-to-back next weekend, Saturday, Sunday against Seattle. So, for those of us who are lucky enough to be able to get into the building, and Josh and I have that luxury at this point, it'll be nice to get back and actually see what Portland can do with some practice time at home. And I think tonight was a good night. It might be the night that we finally maybe see Jarvis and Dero break out. Their chemistry was very evident tonight, and probably the best we've seen it all year between the two. They each had 3 points. We're also starting to see the players we talked about, the young defensemen, develop into their roles. And now with practice time at home and ability to play some games at home ice, and we're almost halfway through the season. So there's only 13 games left, 9 of them at home, 4 on the road. And, regardless of what happens throughout the wins and losses, I'm just really looking forward to seeing some games and seeing the development of the players.
Yeah, it's a good point. And for Portland, they get to sleep in their billet homes and in their own bed, right? And they don't have to travel, and they get their own home cooked meals and all that stuff. They don't have bus legs for a big stretch now going forward. So, final thoughts for me is I'm just enjoying every second, right? Because I was always optimistic. I think I was one of the few guys who thought there would be a season. I always kind of held out hope. I never knew what it would look like, but I was kind of championing the fact that I just think it's too important for them not to play. There's enough other stuff there that is not for a 9:00 start. But I'm just enjoying it, and I hope fans can as well. And just especially guys like Mason Manick and Nick Cicek, the guys that Portland fans have watched for years. If you're a Spokane fan, you get to watch Eli Zumak for another year and Bobby Russell for another year. If you're a Tri-City fan, you get to see Sasha Mutala. And if this season didn't happen, you probably don't see him. And there are some fans in Tri-City's buildings. So for me, just enjoy it. Be positive. There's enough negativity going around right now that there's just enjoy it. I'll use the whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter, right? They do, but they don't, right? The teams are fighting to win. They don't look at it that way. Johnson talked tonight about that they're treating these like playoff series, and they forced Game 7 back at home. That's kind of the mentality that they have coming into Wednesday, right? So it's all about development. Enjoy it, relax, and argue about hockey, but keep it civil.
I couldn't have said it better. It beats the hell out of what we were doing last April, which was watching hockey.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wins and losses, as great. Happy they win, disappointed when they lose, but at the end of the game, it's a hockey game. Right?
Yep.
And it's young players developing, and enjoy it. And I could not agree with you more.
Yep. So as we conclude, be sure to check out PNWHockeyTalk.com. We'll have a recap up there. Andy's got his
I've been slacking,
after
but
after the whistle. Yep.
I'll be working on something probably tomorrow, maybe while I'm watching the finals round of the Masters. So
Wonderful. So yeah, Andy's got a after the whistle blog up there. I see Keith Wiggins in the chat. He's an awesome photographer. Huge thank you to Keith. Anytime, he's one of the 3 main photographers for the Winterhawks. So shout out to Keith. Go check out his work. His link is on PNW Hockey Talk. He's a big supporter of us. So we'll have you covered there. Brandon Rivers will be working on his 5 for reading as well. And so with that, we'll wrap up. I still don't have a new catchphrase to end because I can't say "see you around the rink." I mean, I can say it to Andy, but the rest of you, I don't want to say that. So until next time, Andy, have a good night.
thanks. Take care.